This week on Personally Speaking, our guest is Gregory Jbara. You know him as a wonderful actor from film, television, and of course the Broadway stage. Most importantly, from his work on Blue Bloods. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante, and actor Gregory Jbara joins me now. Greg is currently filming his 15th season as DCPI Garrett Moore on the hit CBS police drama Blue Bloods. He won the 2009 Tony Award, Drama Desk, and Outer Critics Circle Award for feature actor in a musical as Dad in Billy Elliot the Musical. Gregory Jbara also originated the leading roles in the Broadway productions of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Victor Victoria, the revival of Damn Yankees, and he was the second actor to star as Billy Flynn in the Tony Award-winning revival of Chicago. His film credits include Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, Alien Intervention, and A Ramble Towards Rain. Gregory's television credits also include Nurse Jackie, Law and Order, Monk, and Friends. He's a proud University of Michigan alumnus and is a graduate of the Juilliard School. Gregory lives in Los Angeles with his wife, Julie, and their sons, Zachary and Aiden. And he's here with us today to talk about his life, his values, what it means to grow up being Catholic, and the values that sustain him. So I'm delighted now to welcome to Personally Speaking the great actor, Gregory Jbara. First of all, thanks, Greg Jbara, for coming on our program. We're delighted to have you. And I am wanting to begin with an interesting thing I found in reading about you, Greg, was whether it was your two other brothers, your sister, yourself. You have this incredibly successful, highly motivated bunch of siblings, and I'm intrigued by the people who formed and shaped you. So let's go back to family of origin. Tell me a little bit about the parents who formed and shaped you, and why it is that each of you is so accomplished and so driven.
Yeah, as you asked that question, I'm thinking, oh no, I really want to do justice to the answer. My folks were we had a very loving household. First and foremost, we there was music in the house. My mom was a piano player. We were active in the Catholic Church, so there was a lot of community that was involved, both um, from playing sports to, at the T-ball league, to being altar boys, to the church life blending into my families, which were very large. We had very big family. My father
Okay.
was the youngest of 16 siblings,
Oh, wow.
and my mother was one of three sisters, but big, close Irish family. So it wasn't like we were isolated. We had a big sense of social. We developed social skills at a very young age.
Hmm.
The idea of entertaining and engaging people was a big part of our lives. And then we also being, are we the boomers? I never get that straight. But being born in 1961,
Right.
the Wayne Westland public school system in suburban Detroit was, what now that I'm a parent, I understand, of course, the families are going to throw their taxes at great public education because it's still cheaper than a babysitter.
Right.
And everybody was working at that time, moms and dads. But my mom had her hands full but she also worked at the elementary school. It wasn't like, yeah, everybody was working. So, but we went to a public school system that celebrated the arts,
Hmm.
that I went to a high school that had a television station, a
Oh,
radio
okay.
station, and a 68 member men's choir,
Okay.
in addition to a highly competitive football team and sports. We grew up in a place where um, anything was possible, and here we're going to show you what the possibilities are. So there was no excuse for not being able to pursue, your dream.
Greg Jbara is our guest. You know, I'm intrigued too by the family background in terms of ethnicity. You know, I'm Italian and Irish. I know what that means to me, but the unusual combination, at least for me, of meeting someone who is a blend of the Irish and the Lebanese. What did that mean for you, Greg?
Well, I didn't realize that I was Lebanese growing up. I was as Anglo as everybody else in our very insular suburban Westland, Michigan, where quite honestly, I have no I was not aware that the race riots were happening just 15 miles away in Detroit. That's how, protected our little community
Right.
was, or the children were in any event. Um, I, my father is a Lebanese Catholic. His
Hmm.
father came from Hasroun, Lebanon, and opened a grocery store, and they were Catholic. So, um, and dancing was the big hook.
Ah,
The big bands would do their circuit around the country, and there were a couple of major casinos in Detroit and a casino back then was a large dance hall as opposed to a gambling location. So the casinos is where all the big bands would come and play. And my mom and dad met. She went to she was going to, oh, mom, sorry. She's going to hear this and go, really, Greg? I can't remember. Um, dad was at U of D, and mom was at what is now their sister school. I want to say Marygrove, going in nursing, but they both loved to dance, and they met at a dance night on a weekend, and that was the hook.
wait,
That's
wait,
how
wait,
the
wait, Greg. Are you telling me they didn't meet online?
You know, boy, if we had more than 25 minutes, I could tell you about yeah, I know it's a whole different world.
Right.
And it's taken me, as my boys are finding their lives, they're, in their early 20s, and it's like, oh, it's very different now. Yeah, no, not online, in person,
In person at a
actually on
dance.
the dance floor,
Right.
uh, which I think is really wonderfully romantic.
Now, the arts that you went into, the acting and all the rest of it. Most parents in a parish like mine or anywhere would say, "Hey, as an avocation to go into the arts to perform is wonderful, but you better get a real job too." When you decided to devote yourself to the arts, which let's face it is a great but precarious business, any blowback from the family in terms of no, 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 get a job where every week you've got a paycheck and a pension coming in.
Absolutely. I was going to go to the University of Michigan and be a theater major, and my parents said, "No, you aren't. You're going to get you'll have a major in communications and learn how to work at a TV station, and you'll have a minor in physics because you love blowing things up." So that was my original major when I went to the University of Michigan was a majored in communications, minor in physics, but all I did was well, back to your specific question, the folks, understandably, we didn't know anybody who made a living in the entertainment industry. I
Right.
mean, the furthest we could go would be, oh, maybe an arts teacher in the public school system, or maybe an organist who might in our church who might make a living doing that if they hop around to a couple of different, and do a lot of outside gigs. You know what I mean? So the notion that you're going to have a livelihood as an artist it wasn't something that we knew and understood our family, but I knew that it was what I must do. And it only took a year at the University of Michigan to where all my energy was spent in, performing every opportunity that I had, and all the academics were falling by the wayside. That I and then I changed my major to my parents' chagrin at the end of my first year, but it worked out well. Um, I was, you literally wake up knowing it's the only thing you can do that's going to make you happy, and
Yeah.
you 100% immerse yourself in it. And that was my life from early grade school in terms of the performing arts. It was not just an actor, it was instrumental and vocal music, all the all city choirs and bands,
Hmm.
the gifted program. It was like I did everything I could to constantly be in the thick of it. And, civic theater, it was my life. So it only made sense that and it was interesting, I suppose, in hindsight, that the folks said, no, that won't be your major
Right.
in college, but it worked out.
So you had a passion and you followed your passion, and they ultimately respected that. Now, for those who don't know, Greg Jbara also spent an awful lot of time. I'm willing to say that at some point in his life, Greg spent as much time on the altar as I have, in that he was an altar server. He was an altar server, and then he was a cantor and a choir member at St. Charles Borromeo. And I mention that because when you've hung out on the altar as often as you did in your youth, I got to ask you, this is kind of a loaded question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you remember anything of those years in terms of, like, you listened to homilies, you listened to sermons? Did they put you to sleep, or did you have the privilege of hearing guys back then as an altar server or as a cantor who were worth listening to?
Yeah, I think, well, let me also say I credit the Catholic Church for making me an actor because it was being up on the altar that when I went back like on a Monday or Tuesday back to my public school in third grade, and someone I knew said, "Hey man, I saw you up on stage at church." And it was like, "You did? Yeah, you in that red dress with the white frilly thing." And it was like,
Hmm.
oh, you really, I went, oh, people do notice that you're up there. So I had, because my family did, and my father, who was a lector, on the weekends, and occasionally during the winter when nobody was showing up for those weekday masses, um, or because my dad would have to drive me because there's no way my bike was going to go through 3 feet of snow to make it to that 6:30 mass on a Wednesday. So he would stay and also lecture for that mass. But um, the where was I going with this? But I was very aware of and highly respectful of the role that I played in supporting the pastor for that particular service. So, and I enjoyed it. But I was also initially, yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a wonderful sense of service and purpose too as a young kid,
Hmm.
especially when my younger brothers were roped in and we had our own altar boy group where it would say the Jabara group on the in the bulletin at the end of every week when it would show who's serving which masses next week. you know it, yeah, it was a great sense of pride and responsibility. Third grade, and you have to go make sure. Probably gave me the skills to make me a great line cook, which I did when I was at Michigan, is understanding where to find things and
Right.
how they get clean when they're done, and then they have to go back where you found them because somebody else needs them for the next mass on the next day.
What an interesting life you've led. Greg Jabbar is our guest, and let's go to another dimension of family life. Every weekend when I do weddings, I'll do a couple this weekend. I always want to know so I can preach properly something about what did you see in this person that made you say I can build a life with them, and you chose Julie, and I'm just wondering if you'd been asked to do the same thing, like you could marry a billion other people, but you chose her and she chose you. What did you see in her that made you say I can do this?
All right out of the gate, superficially, I,
Mm.
I found her the most attractive human being I ever saw.
Okay, that's the first thing.
Um,
Sure.
we also it's also important to note that I was going through a divorce from my first wife at the time.
Okay.
So it was a life lesson that I was carrying with me. It was probably it was definitely the work that I was doing as a human, getting in touch with what were the choices I made for my first marriage, who she was a spectacular human being, but it was not the right fit. So when I saw Julie, initially it was holy mackerel. I would love to show up going to a Broadway show with that woman on my arm. That would show because I was a Broadway actor at the time. That would show everybody that Greg's okay. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But she turned out to be a much higher integral um um
Mm.
I don't even know the right vocabulary. The work that she does on herself on a daily basis, to answer the questions that she struggles with herself, and then the abundant love that she's able to give and understanding. It was like, oh, even though I think I'm a nice guy, it's you. I saw things in her that I wanted, and I knew that having her in my life would help me be a better human being, and I was going to be really happy.
And you have been, and you have been,
and
which is
and I have been,
great.
and she's proven herself literally to this day that all the things I've needed from her, she's provided, in spades. Yeah.
You mentioned the first marriage, and we actually had Danny Burstein on the program,
Oh,
and
so you're okay. Oh, well,
yeah,
you
yeah,
really are dialed in.
yeah, and years ago we had Rebecca on, so
Oh,
we're very connected more than I realized to that family, and her tragic ending with ALS was heartbreaking. But let's go to something else, another dimension of family life. Greg Jbara is our guest. Greg is not only married to wonderful Julie, but he has raised up Aiden and Zachary, and I'm just intrigued. Like, were you intimidated at all by the idea of being a dad, especially again going back to a career that is on the move? And would I be there? Would I be enough to be the great dad I should be? How did you approach parenthood? And I'm the celibate priest here, so I'm intrigued by how do you take the values that mean the most to you, Greg, and see that the children at least examine and perhaps embrace them?
yeah. I would say even to this day, our two sons who are now 23 and 20. And I like to add their height because I come from a world of very little Irish and Lebanese people, and I'm freakishly 6'1", like the only grandchild on both sides who's over 6 feet. My wife is 6 feet tall, although she won't say it because apparently women don't like to admit that they're 6 feet tall. And she's shorter than her birth parents. So my boys are the youngest is 6'7", Aiden, and Zachary is 6'5".
Whoa.
The 23-year-old. He's a commercial pilot and currently training um, other pilots while he's acquiring his hours to get an airline job. And our youngest son is about to embark on his third year as a college baseball player. And
Okay.
they are they have knocked me out of the water. What's the right term? I don't have all those isms in my back pocket. I am amazed, but actually credit goes to my wife. I always say that Julie has done a spectacular job raising three boys because that's really what she has done. And I'm the third boy, and I'm still a work in progress. And I'm also benefiting from the two of my sons who have grown into amazing integral human beings and have kept me in check. And I don't know. My wife and I have been talking about this a lot lately about our attitudes toward, you know what? It's everything's going to be fine. Like
Mhm.
that's always been my mantra, always. Like and it's probably because we don't have time to go into, but there were some major traumatic experiences that I had in my youth that somehow I got through and past. And it's events that if you worried about them, you'd think this would end my world as I know it. The stress would paralyze you. But uh, in my life, I have gotten through some major hurdles, and I think it created a sense of, you know what, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
You can't worry about what you have no control over, and when things come, we address them, and then we get to the other side of it. And I really know that that's been the case in my life. And um, am I deserving of that? That's the question we constantly wrestle with. How come I get to be continue on? Because some of the choices I made, of course, were character flaws, but um, I, as an actor as well, I can remember in my early days, everybody going, "Oh, you should be further along in your career than you are now, and how come you're not a big star?" And blah blah blah. And I go, I'm actually happy, and I
Right.
have,
Right.
even when I'm unemployed, I have no doubt that something wonderful is just waiting down the road, and that's always been, it really has always been my attitude.
Isn't that terrific? Greg Jabbar is our guest, and going to those challenges of life, among them has to be the work itself. So I want to talk about that. I've had the privilege, most people listening to our program, watching our program, of course, would be most familiar with you through Blue Bloods, but I had the privilege of seeing you in Victor Victoria and seeing you in your award-winning performance in Billy Elliot. But I'm just wondering, again, and you're in that kind of world where lots of people are watching and evaluating what you do, how well you do it. But Greg Jabara, do critics matter at all? Do you even read critics? We had Michael Urie on recently. He said, I don't, because if they say good stuff, I might believe it. If they say bad stuff, I might believe it. So he doesn't read them. Well, what about yourself? Critics, what do they mean to you?
I always read because everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't personalize it, but I want to pride myself in finding a way of making everybody happy, right? Like that with the work I'm doing is going to resonate for everybody no matter what. So if somebody if there's a dissent or someone who doesn't agree with something I've done in my work,
Hmm.
I think it has value because it's so, oh, that's something to consider. Is that something in my control? Is that,
Right.
are they just out of their minds and not worth, an iota of consideration? Or, I don't personalize it. So,
Hmm.
um, I don't have a problem. I like reading it because I think it's informative. It's how, other than the applause that you get from a live audience, the people who put you know cons criticism on the page, it's an opportunity to go, oh, that's interesting. I totally disagree, but that's interesting, and thank you for your share.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't personalize it,
That's
and I also and I work hard not to let it affect my work
okay.
because I don't take it personally.
Greg Jbara is our guest. Greg, I'm in a parish, Our Lady of Lourdes in beautiful Massapequa Park, New York, where I'm the pastor. And to be honest with you, we are loaded in this community with uh, public servants, police, firefighters, EMTs. I mention that because they love blue bloods. But, it's not just people in my parish. Obviously, many people love blue bloods. Any insight into, because you worked in so many fields of entertainment, what is the hook? What is the allure that has kept this thing so popular? So many people incredibly devoted to Blue Bloods. What has Blue Bloods got that makes people want to love it so much?
Okay, not that I'm getting on a pedestal here, but the Catholic family value and that
Yeah,
family dinner,
yeah,
there's a reverence there, and and
yeah.
and and sadly, on some levels, a nostalgic longing for
Right,
to
right.
return to what that Reagan family does. I think that's that, and that family dinner, which is the opportunity for how many generations to download whatever their experiences are, that we've gone with them for the last 50 minutes, right? So that, I think that the value of a family dinner is
Hmm.
something that the audience gets to live through because they've been on the journey with all those characters, and then when they get to see how it's processed in the community of their family, that's healing that people want to, that not everybody knows how to do anymore. And I think people like that practice
Yeah.
that the show provides.
Greg Jabara has been our guest on Personally Speaking. I promise you I'm going to wrap soon, but I want to ask you, those wonderful parents you were talking about earlier in the program, are they still with us or have they gone to heaven?
Dad passed, uh, well, much too long ago, but before Billy Elliot, which really saddens me only, although I know he saw it
Yeah.
because he was with me every night on stage because I was actually celebrating. My father was a big source of I of my character for that work.
Mm.
So my dad was with me, but mom still lives, depending on the traffic. She's in Oxnard, California. So she could be 45 minutes away or she could be 3 days away, depending on whether the 101 is choked or not
Right,
with,
right, right.
with holiday traffic. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Gratefully.
that's
Yeah.
great.
She's still here and really just 100% active. She chooses not to drive at night, which is great. But she's 100% independent and still a vital, powerful force in all of our lives, especially our grandkids. It's
What
great.
what what a great blessing that is. My mom went home this past year to God at 102, but she lived in the rectory the last 4 years, so we had a great time together. But I promise, last question about hope. Greg Jabbar has been our guest. So the first interview I did a long, long time ago was with the film director Frank Capra of It's a Wonderful Life fame, and I love Frank. We became good friends. But I mentioned that
Wow.
because at the beginning of the film, as they're talking about George Bailey and saving George, and Clarence, the guardian angel, says, what's the matter? Is he sick? And St. Joseph says, no, worse than sick. He's discouraged. We're living in an age of discouragement, Greg. You know that in terms of the world and the culture in America. But as a guy who is a man of faith and a man of hope, I just got to ask, how do you keep hope alive for yourself?
Uh, I'm learning that communication is the biggest
Mm,
productive tool. If I really, when I tried to deal with things by myself,
right.
that's when I felt the greatest decay took
Oh,
place. And often the hardest thing to do is to find the courage, and it is for me, to ask for help. Um, and I have found I'm living today, this very moment, because of the tools that have been given me by my wife and in maturity, learning that instead of trying to cope I'm by myself, if I ask for help, reach out and just express what's concerning me, that things just by exposure tend to vaporize, or then you find that there are people who are absolutely unjudgmentally, lovingly there to support you no matter what your struggle is. So I would say don't go alone. There are people and resources to help
Yeah.
with discouragement, and but that's often the hardest thing to do, isn't it? To ask for help.
Yeah, it is. I thank Greg Jbara for being with us. Gregory Jbara is a wonderful actor. You know that from seeing him on stage and TV and movies, I hope. But this show is called Personally Speaking for a reason, because today we got to see who he is as a son, as a brother, as a husband. And you're just a wonderful guy, Greg. I even love, and it's a small moment in our program today, but I love that you could be so gracious, even about a woman you were married to, and talk about what a brilliant lady she was. You're just very kind, good, kind, insightful, and I'm just so grateful. And you're not afraid to identify in this world where many people in your business don't identify as people of faith, and say, I'm Catholic. This is what I'm raised. This is who I am, and I'm okay with those values. And I just treasure people like you who can be who they are comfortably in their own skin and share that with others. So, Greg Jbara, thank you for being with us on Personally Speaking.
Thank you, Monsignor. What a gift you are. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You've been probably listening to this show on the Catholic channel at 129 on Sirius XM. We're also seen on YouTube. Search under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. In addition to acting as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking, I'm also the pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Massapequa Park, New York, where we post daily Mass on YouTube. So please join us at Mass, as well as on our interview program, Personally Speaking. Please share and let others know about Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.